Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me. Managing stray cats. Why am I talking about that at a feral cat conference? Might be a bit of an uncomfortable topic for some people. Hopefully by the end of my presentation, I'll have given you at least some food for thought. Okay, so depending on which country you're in and which population of cats you're dealing with, a whole bunch of terms are applied to them, and they're often very emotive. In Australia, our legislation currently tends to define stray cats, unowned cats, or free-roaming cats. And surprisingly, we do have a little bit of information about stray cats, though not as much as other countries. We're still lagging behind in that way. Modelling by Legg et al. Has shown that there are about 1 million cats that are considered to be unowned in Australia at any one time. The RSPCA reports up to 50% of intakes into their shelters, depending on the state, can be classified as stray. And I've calculated that that percentage of cats going into shelters represents only 15% of the actual cats that are out there in our urban areas and classified as stray. There are three main sources of stray cats. First of all, there's lost or abandoned pets, and we have quite a lot of information about that. We have accidental and unwanted breeding of pet cats, and that includes veterinary stakeholders as well, and we have quite a bit of info on that. The first two that I've just talked about lend themselves fairly well to legislation, along with enforcement, to target increased responsible ownership. But it's this third source of stray cats, the breeding of unowned cats, that tend to occupy a bit of a grey area. And there are definitely calls to tighten up the restrictions and the language that's used to describe stray cats when it comes to how you manage populations of breeding unknown cats in urban areas. This grey zone means that this population of cats is often neglected when it comes to management, and the majority of money that is spent on managing cats is funded privately or by NGOs. The other problem is, in the bottom corner in the box there, I've just taken some literally cut and paste from some of the legislation around Australia that gives you permission to seize free-roaming cats, and the kind of language that's used is quite ambiguous and leaves a lot of things up to interpretation. In a lot of instances, it's left up to the public or registered controllers to actually catch stray cats, but that means that the impetus is then on them to determine whether a cat is a nuisance, to guess its ownership status, and to then assess its temperament, which obviously varies hugely with the skill and expertise of the public or the controller involved, but it also is complicated by the fact that all cats have a tendency to be defensive when they're caught in a trap. And then there's the issue of abuse. Unfortunately, the legislation's ambiguity also allows a degree of abuse to happen, and it only takes a few instances of people doing the wrong thing to draw the wrong attention to any attempts to manage cats, whether you're feral, stray or pet. So we do know a little bit about stray cats, but you might want to know, well, why, Heather, we're here talking about ferals. Why should we worry about stray cats? Well, from my perspective and the way I've studied stray, pet and feral cats, what I've found out is that this population of cats is most prone to poor health, and they're most vulnerable to poor health and bad welfare outcomes. So from the studies that we've conducted, one of the things that's popped out is that they can live at variable densities. So they can live at densities as high as pets or higher, or as low as ferals, depending on where they are, what food's available in the environment. Interestingly, they're actually leading lives that are comparable with feral cats in terms of the longevity. And in some instances, they're actually living shorter lives, which might come as a bit of a surprise. They are not as subjected to the elements as feral cats are, but their survivorship from kittenhood into adulthood is quite low. And yet, despite this, they tend to cluster in our urban areas around food, and you will often have people deliberately feeding groups of cats, and these are called colonies, and the people who feed them are called caretakers. If these cats are lucky enough to live in one of those areas, they might be subjected to trapping, desexing, and a one-off treatment with worming or vaccinations. However, apart from that, compared to cats that are pets that are getting a lot of prophylactic treatment and feral cats which are being harshly regulated by the environment, these stray cats are living in limbo, benefiting but also not benefiting from our association with them. This is just a quick snapshot to show you that there's a lot of gaps in the evidence about stray cat health. If our pet cats are able to carry some of these zoonotic and other horrible transmissible diseases and parasites, then there's no reason to expect that stray cats would be any different, so that the people that look after stray cats would have you believe otherwise. So I did a study with some colleagues from Murdoch University where we actually assessed the health demographics and stray cats, health demographic and diet of almost 200 stray cats. And we found that they had an even higher prevalence of gastrointestinal parasites than feral cats did. We actually had 95% of them had gastrointestinal parasites and 3% of those had zoonotic parasites in them. Although we didn't test actively for feline immunodeficiency virus, 50% of those cats actually exhibited symptoms, and I believe if we had done the testing, we would have found that the disease prevalence is very high. This is relevant because we already have a very high prevalence of FIV amongst pet cats, and charities actively rehome cats with FIV. If these are then allowed to roam, you have the potential to spread diseases for which there are no cure. Cats get about 5 years from diagnosis to death with FIV. The other thing that is constantly said about stray cat managers is that you don't need to manage them because they're doing well. They're getting enough food, they're fat as little ticks, and they are clearly, fairly socialised and exposed to people. Yeah, they're breeding all the time, but the impact on the wildlife can't be that bad, so let's just leave them in place. My research found that these cats actually look incredible from the outside, but when you look at them on the inside, they're actually really bad. The fat little pudding on the left-hand side is a female, and she's a prolific breeder. As soon as I opened her up, she was stripped of any subcutaneous or abdominal internal fat reserves, and basically she was going into reproduction and producing babies from the moment she was about 4 to 6 months old, right up until she was euthanased. What we did also find when we aged the cats was that the cats that were being deliberately fed by people regularly with good quality pet food, their lives were actually being extended, so their survivorship was being prolonged. However, they're still not living a hell of a long time, so the benefits of keeping a cat in a colony is doubtful. I've just been told I've got 2 minutes, and I'm shocked at how quickly that has gone. I'm going to scoot round to the crux of my message. Was that please download the Australian Cat Action Plan. This is organised by communities that are interested in managing stray cats. They've done incredible work in terms of developing programs for pet cats. However, stray cat management is all based on a process called trap, neuter, release, and they are coming for you. There is information being pumped out at the moment in the academic literature, being supported by several universities across Australia, where we're actually going to use trap, neuter, release to manage feral cats. If this happens, you're looking at a future where all your pet cats are kept indoors and people are penalised for doing the wrong thing, all your feral cats are being euthanased, and all the stray cats are playing merrily on the streets in the middle. Now, if that's not confusing for pet owners or for people controlling feral cats, then I don't know what is. So there's a proposal to extend the extension of feral cats to include that of stray cats. This has been done overseas. Let's not reinvent the wheel here. It just takes one bad incident to propel support for underground, currently illegal work. This was Port of Newcastle. They hired a licensed technician, and instead of actually killing the stray cats that were being fed deliberately and existing for 5 years, they actually only shot 3 and then injured 6 others. And the colony caretakers went on Facebook and took off, and they've actually produced a scientific publication, I've referenced down the bottom there, explaining how TNR is going to solve the problems in Australia and we can't kill stray cats. So, my prediction for future cat management, we can't ignore this topic anymore. We might change the definitions to become 2 rather than 3. However, the public is watching and it's vocal, and bad press is a thing in the future, so please educate yourself about how the middle are feeling and read the Cat Action Plan, because they are very advanced in terms of how they're going to use that plan to negotiate with councils to restructure legislation to make TNR an actual management option. And this will undo all of the excellent work that has already been done in managing responsible pet ownership and feral cat control. So I think we actually need to realise that we have to engage with these people and try and get them on our side. And if not, then we have to legislate against them and enforce it. So we need a unified approach, that's certainly, and if we can't get it across states, then we are going to be in trouble. But that obviously needs a lot of funding and investment. And we need people to be publishing information that is anti-TNR as well. So thank you for your time.